Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Marietta, Georgia. My name is James Poteet, and I'm a member of the worship team, and I serve as the lead advisor for the Cobb Gay Straight Alliance. I want to offer a special welcome to those who may be joining our online service for the first time. We hope that all are nourished in heart and mind by our worship today. As Unitarian Universalists, we welcome a wide variety of theological and spiritual beliefs. We honor the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person. You are welcome here. All are warmly invited to join us for activities following the service. Fellowship time begins immediately afterward right here in this Zoom room. And we will break into smaller groups so that you have time to chat and get to know each other. So join us with your coffee or drink of your choice. Beginning at 11:15, there are a variety of engaging online classes for children, youth, and adults. Each is a wonderful opportunity to explore meaningful topics. Adult classes are held in Zoom meeting rooms, and links will be posted in the chat. They are also available in the notebook and in the order of service, which you can find on our website, emersonuu.org. That's emersonuu.org. While there, you can also subscribe to our email list. And now I'd like to tell you about our guest speaker today. Today's guest is C.B. Beal, who joins us from a farmhouse library loft in Western Massachusetts. C.B. is a fat, white, queer, non-binary educator, writer, storyteller, and speaker. In 2019, C.B. received the UUA's McLean Award for Excellence in Religious Education. C.B. consults with individuals and organizations to increase consent culture, equity, and justice in the world. You can learn more by visiting their website, and in a moment I'll drop a link in the chat. Please excuse my dog and her color. Today's message is called Bear Witness, Save Lives. In order to truly tell our stories, we must trust that others will be still, bear witness, and acknowledge and accept what we share. When we are present with one another, with empathy that honors our different life experiences, we literally save each other. Today, we will learn from our guest about the spiritual practice of bearing witness with a particular focus on gender. Each Sunday, we light the chalice to begin our service and to affirm our Unitarian Universalist values. Our chalice lighting words today come from SUUF. In this free church, we come together without creed, focusing instead on justice, equity, and compassion. We come together in mutual acceptance of our diverse ways of being. We come together in the stubborn belief that community is possible and that peace is more than a dream. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope for those who have gathered here today. In a moment, we'll hear the opening words from our guest speaker, but first, in the spirit of community, I invite you to take a moment to greet those with you this morning, whether in person or online, and let us remember our motto, we need not think alike to love alike.
14th century Sufi poet Hafez wrote, "Admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, 'Love me.' Of course, you do not say this out loud, otherwise someone would call the authorities. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with the full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other eye in this world is dying to hear?
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no yet again of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, wanderer, yet again, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, come, yet again, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again 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 come.
This morning, I'm going to tell a story that was originally penned by Kyle McClear. Now, it was a picture book originally, and what you get today is not pictures, but me. So let me tell you ahead of time that the characters in this story are a spork, its parents, the fork and spoon, and various other cutlery. Later in the scene, a very messy toddler appears quite suddenly. Spork was neither spoon nor fork, but a bit of both, and also neither. Spork had two parents who both thought that Spork was perfectly sporky, but Spork stuck out. In the kitchen, forks were forks and spoons were spoons. Cutlery customs were closely followed. Mixing was uncommon. The forks and the spoons knew who they were and what they were for. Naturally, there were rule breakers, knives who loved chopsticks and tongs who married forks, but such families were unusual. Spork spent most of their time tucked in the bottom corner of the back drawer. You know the drawer, the one with the 5 corn-on-the-cob forks and the 3 plastic straws and that old can opener that sticks that we keep for when the good can opener has gone missing. That drawer. When Spork came out of the drawer to sit on the countertop, the other utensils would say hi and move on, forget they had met Spork many times before, ignore Spork completely, or even ask intrusive questions. One day, after the billionth time Spork was asked, "Have you been coming here long?" And "What are you anyway?" And "Has your body always been like that?" And the zillionth time Spork was passed over when the table was being set, Spork sighed and thought, "It must be easier to be a single thing that everyone else is." And Spork decided to try to pick just one thing to be. Spork thought to start by fixing their head, and so put on a bowler hat to look more spoonish. But the forks thought that Spork was too round. Then Spork made a paper crown to look more forkish, but the spoons thought that Spork was too pointy. Spork wondered if there were other lonely creatures out there with no matching kind who never got chosen to be at the table, who didn't really belong. They wondered if there was an egg beater rolling pin, or a garlic press ice cream scoop, or a spatula teapot. But Spork never met them. At dinner time, Spork watched from the counter while the spoons played pea hockey and skillfully balanced boiled eggs. Spork sat off to the side while the forks raked fancy patterns in the mashed potatoes and twirled noodles around in complicated circles like rhythmic gymnastics. At the end of this and every other meal, Spork looked on while the others enjoyed a fabulous dip in the pool. There were even bubbles and a spongy massage. But Spork was there, watching from the counter, then shuffled back to their drawer. But then one day, a messy thing arrived. This messy thing had obviously never heard of cutlery customs or table manners. It had its way with the spaghetti. It giggled to see the peas bounce and spread across the floor in great patterns of escape. No cutlery customs at all. This messy thing smeared and spilled and flung and clumped and dripped without a care. Wait, said the forks, but the messy thing did not wait. Fling! Careful, said the spoons, but the messy thing was not careful. Smear! Oh, help, said the forks, while the messy thing continued to slop and splatter. Quick, said the spoons. They didn't know what to do with the messy thing. Now, a fork may be fine for poking and picking, and a spoon may be good for scooping and stirring, but this messy thing with its slurpy and clumpy half-finished food bits needed something else. Something flexible and easy to hold, something that was neither spoon nor fork, but a bit of both and also neither. The utensils looked around and they saw Spork. They gasped and immediately felt a very strange mixture of excitement and relief and embarrassment. And that is when Spork leapt off the countertop, over the cutlery drawer, and landed on the high chair. Doop, doop! The messy thing saw Spork and immediately stopped. Its eyes got bigger. It gurgled its curiosity. It grabbed Spork and held Spork motionless in its fist. It banged Spork up and down and let out a cheerful because that's the story of how Spork finally and happily found their way to the table. But meanwhile, the cutlery, having realized that the mistake was theirs all along, immediately had a meeting and voted unanimously to begin the process of reorganizing the entire kitchen. They asked Spork what Spork needed and others. They listened. They bore witness to lives they had not previously understood nor even noticed. In the end, there was a space for Spork, and a proper space for the 5 corn-on-the-cob forks and the 3 plastic straws and the old can opener that sticks. They built new spaces that would properly fit the egg beater rolling pin, the garlic press ice cream scoop, and the spatula teapot, who had all started hanging out in the kitchen now that this work had begun. They learned about Spork, and they started to notice when they were unfriendly. They started interrupting each other if someone asked an intrusive or rude question. They stopped asking Spork and their friends to prove their experience, and they simply started learning about their experience. Well, as they did these things, they learned more about themselves than they thought they already knew. Why, they found out there was a whole subgroup of forks and spoons that would really rather play board games than spend so much time in the pool. And there were some knives that wanted to hang out in the garage with the hatchets. Turns out they were so busy thinking that they knew who they were. It hadn't occurred to them that they were already so many things at one time. When they finished the kitchen remodel, they left empty spaces as well, spaces that were constructed with flexibility for whomever came next. The table was for all, So the organization had to be as well. And they all agreed that spork was perfectly sporky, just a little bit round, just a little bit pointy, just right. Please join us now in singing our song of dedication.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other.
Here at Emerson, we seek truths and celebrate differences. We encourage each other to serve and to act on our Unitarian Universalist principles. We are able to do this when members, friends, and guests give generously. Each month, we partner with a local organization committed to spreading justice, peace, and compassion in the community. This month's partner is Lost and Found Youth in Atlanta. Your contribution today will be shared equally between Emerson and Lost and Found. Any amount is appreciated, and we thank you for putting your values into action. Ways of giving will be shown on the screen, and there will be a link in the chat.
40% of the homeless youth population identifies as LGBTQ. Lost and Found Youth's mission is to end homelessness for LGBTQ youth by providing them with the skills and support needed to live independently. More than half the homeless youth we serve were rejected by their families after they came out. Even on the street, they face discrimination, harassment, violence, and sexual abuse. Lost and Found youth are often their only refuge. Your support enables us to raise awareness and give homeless LGBTQ youth in Atlanta shelter, clothing, and food. Together, we create a network that maintains their physical and mental health needs. Support Lost and Found youth today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Klein, and I serve as Emerson's Director of Family Ministry. And also, I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Team at Emerson. You know, the Pastoral Care Team members are listening ears and caring hearts to support you during the challenging times. You can contact us at our email address, pastoralcare@emersonuu.org. At this time in our service, we pause to share joys, sorrows, and concerns of our Emerson community. Each Sunday, we light our vegetable bowl. Its light represents the light of hope for peaceful resolution of all conflicts on our planet, and it honors all dedicated people who serve us, including those on the front line of the COVID-19 virus battle. We also light a special candle of acknowledgement for the Cherokee and Muskogee nations of people who lived on this land before us. May the candle that we light remind us of our interconnection, and may our actions help heal all nations of people. I share these joys with you today. I have two of them, Judy Griffith, and Kathy Tomlin. Each have sent messages that they had surgery past weeks ago. And we're very glad to hear that both of you are recovering at home now, and we continue to send our sunniest well wishes for your continued speedy recoveries. If you have any personal joys you'd like to share with your Emerson family, please feel free to type them in the chat function now. I take this opportunity now to share our our sorrows and our concerns. We have a concern that I'd like to acknowledge this morning. that our hearts are heavy again this week as continuing news updates from around our nation chronicle what seems to be an almost daily gun violence and loss of life situation. An unknown poet wrote these words: "Goodbyes hurt the most when the story is not finished." May we keep those whose stories were not finished in our thoughts and prayers today, along with the loved ones who grieve for them. As no sorrows were sent to the pastoral care team this week, we know that many of you have sorrows you may want to bring to the congregation's attention by using the chat function on Zoom. Please take a minute to share those that are troubling your heart this morning. We also know that there may be joys and sorrows that are too tender to share. Please feel free to speak or type into the chat the name of someone you're holding in your heart today. Let us send our heartfelt, caring intentions to all people everywhere by offering the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. The words are projected here, and they're also printed in your order of service. Please join me. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May they be free from harm and suffering. May they be well in body, heart, and mind. May they be at peace. Blessed be.
And now we pause for a special observance. Every year, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, or GLSEN, sponsors an event called the Day of Silence. The Day of Silence is a national student-led demonstration in which queer students and their allies take a vow of silence to protest harassment and discrimination of LGBTQ+ students. In the spirit of bearing witness, let's take a couple of minutes to hear directly from queer students. I will now share my screen. This year, the Day of Silence is on Friday, April 23rd, just a few days away. If you are a student or a teacher and would like to learn more, I will put a link in the chat. The website contains information about registration and participation. And now we go to our guest, CB, for our time of meditation.
I invite you to be present with yourself. Feel your body in your chair or on the floor or the edge of the couch, wherever it is you are. Feel your feet beneath you and have a breath in and out, knowing you are breathing with one another, together. These are the words of James Baldwin. For nothing is fixed. Forever and forever and forever it is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us, and the light goes out.
Stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say. Nobody wants your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say. No one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. For we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna I make no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, fire away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors, yes, that's who we've become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. For we are warriors, and the sharpest words want to cut me down. I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. Whenever the words want to cut me down, I send the blood to drown 'em out. This is me.
It can be said that Unitarians are a particularly wordy people. In fairness, it's true about me. I mean, look where I am and what I do for a living. Right? We spend a lot of time talking about what we think is true. Politics, fixing what's wrong, teaching the children. About governance, polity, and covenant. We think about something, decide what's right, and take positions on things. None of that is what Spork needed. None of that was what Hafez was referencing. Those things are but part of the container for what we need. As much as we use love to think and talk, argue, and search for truth and meaning, these activities do not build trust. They might build knowledge or awareness. They might build the kind of connection that comes from striving together with common purpose, belief, and commitment. But talking about our ideas doesn't build trust. Talking about our lives and having our truth received and held dear, that builds trust. See, trust is not a cognitive brain-based experience. I think it's primarily emotional. And if we're part of a religious tradition that prides itself in our thinking, we have to work all the harder to build trust. Spork had no reason to trust the other utensils that were also in charge, not simply because they ignored Spork, but also because they did not know or care about Spork's life. They did not know how to make space for Spork, what Spork was like, what they needed, or what they cared about. So Spork had no feeling of connection or care or trust with them. In rearranging the kitchen drawers, the other utensils spoke with Spork and learned about Spork's life and the lives of the others who are like Spork or just different from everyone in different ways. They didn't just see that there was a problem with the one drawer and build a new one that was just like the first, only bigger, but rather they connected with Spork in a way that meant that later on they wouldn't ignore Spork in another situation. They would know Spork deeply and be in trusting relationship. And then Spork would trust them because they had made themselves trustworthy. They restructured the entire kitchen by changing their perspective, their behavior, and their environment. Because care and trust is built when people bear witness to themselves and one another. Now, in congregational life with discussions about funding and polity and the next social justice project, we spend a lot of time searching for what is right, what is best. And if we're striving to be right, we're living in our cognitive brain competing for rightness, and it can become a battle. Now, this isn't an inherently bad thing. In the right circumstances, this competing for rightness, this battle is necessary. We battle sexism and patriarchy, homophobia and transmisogyny, classism and systemic racial oppression. We battle police misconduct. We battle encroaching national fascism. But, and, if it is our most common and comfortable way of interacting, it interferes with beloved community. Bearing witness is different. When we bear witness to people, we must consistently notice and set aside our thoughts and assumptions. Things that don't make sense to us from their story because we don't yet have the whole picture. We must recognize when we are bearing witness that what it is so different from our experience, we must take care not to dismiss it. When we bear witness, it means that we prioritize the story someone else wishes to tell over the questions we already have about where we want that story to go, or the ways our mind tries to fill in the gaps in the way they tell their story. When we can still our minds and be present with someone, just present, we can bear witness to another's story. And that then puts us in a position of being able to express meaningful empathy, to say, wow, that must have been hard. Or, oh my goodness, I am so sorry that happened. You did not deserve that. Or, that's amazing. I am so honored that you told me that delightful story. When we tell the stories of our lives, people have the opportunity to hold space for the unveiling of more of us. And I mean here, not just chit chat about our kids' recital or ski trip or humble bragging about a promotion, although those certainly have important social places in our interactions. But when we talk about things that are meaningful to us, when we share our perspective and experience, and then find that the listener has received, held, acknowledged, and believed us, we will find that person trustworthy. The person who receives our experience is the person who is trustworthy. It's not about ideas. But we so often do not experience that, do we? We all too often experience people trying to fix us or our situation, or worse, telling us that our experience is wrong. And it's also all too often we who try to fix things for others. There's a term called gaslighting you may be familiar with. It means to manipulate someone into questioning their own perception of reality, questioning their sanity. It comes from a play and a movie of the same name. And in that movie, a man attempted to make his wife think she was completely unwell, to question her own perceptions by, among other things, adjusting the lighting, a gas lamp, downward, a little at a time. And when she would say, "It's dark in here," He would say, no, it's not. This was repeated and repeated until she questioned her own perception of reality because she was perceiving a pitch dark room while her husband pretended to read the newspaper. It's not dark in here. The goal of gaslighting is to get someone to disbelieve their own perception of reality and replace it with someone else's. It happens all too often, and I suggest it's something we need to notice and discard from our congregational lives. People who are like Spork, people who do not experience their gender as being clearly man or woman, but something else and also neither. Or people who experience their gender as man or woman, but not in the way broader society consistently tells them they're supposed to. These people are gaslit in our society every single day. People say, there's no such thing as trans. There's no such thing as non-binary. And the reasoning usually boils down to some version of, because I'm not non-binary and it doesn't make sense to me, so I don't believe you. Now, I suggest we're all familiar with this. Those of us who are survivors of dysfunctional families and abuse, or survivors of illnesses like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome that other people told us didn't exist and we didn't have. We've experienced being surrounded by people who told us we were wrong or broken. Those of us who were told we were bad or lazy when it turned out we were just neurodiverse and nobody knew what it was back then. We have experienced people tell us our perceptions of our experience are not valid because our perceptions differ from theirs, so it must be all in our head, made up. Some version of, I don't have that. I've never heard of that. I haven't personally seen the science. I don't believe you. And this is even more broadly true for all of us who are survivors of and live with pervasive racism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism. I've never seen that oppression like you said, we hear. Oh, that wasn't what I meant. Don't have your feelings hurt. Or, do you have a study to back that up? I don't believe you. Now, I must admit, I've been on both sides of this. I have been both a person whose reality is challenged by someone else who refuses to bear witness to my life, and I've also been the person who uses my reality to judge others. Sometime maybe have me back and I'll tell you a couple stories because I am nothing if not my very own cautionary tale. But for right now, this. I come from about 400 years of Puritan New Englanders. I come from people with names like Harbot Grimscottle. And regardless of your family history, if you're you are deeply bound up in this history as well. I come from generations of people who, when someone dies, says, well, that's too bad, got to get on with it. I come from people for whom grieving is private and internal and set aside as quickly as possible, and empathy, if even offered, is shaken off. Feelings are meant to be things that flash back past, darting like a bird that never lands. And we are taught our own judgment is most likely right. We were raised to believe that we always know best, and that we already know enough to make an assessment about pretty much anything. I think that this also means that since I come from a long line of people who, because we're never able to sit with our grief, we were never taught what it is to deeply experience what we are experiencing, our Puritan roots in our family cultures lead us to gaslight even ourselves. Our whole family denies some of the deepest and most profound emotions. And if we don't learn how to sit with grief and sadness, how on earth can we have true empathy and witness for others? But grief isn't the only emotion my Puritan heritage has kept from us, I suggest. When I was a kid, I knew 3 feeling words: mad, sad, and what was the other one again? Oh yeah, mad. We weren't taught how to notice or honor or feel our own feelings. Not even the names for them. How could we possibly bear witness to others? We were never taught how to sit with their feelings, with their stories. Sarah Jane would start to tell a story about the ruined bread that she couldn't make. It wouldn't rise. And we'd interrupt quickly and ask if the yeast was primed or the oven hot enough. We didn't want her to be sad. We didn't want to have to witness her discomfort, because when we did, we also had deeply uncomfortable feelings that we were not used to. So we try to fix the problem instead of just being present with her in her discomfort and upset. John James might express his distress that his kid's Pinewood Derby racer kept getting stuck partway down the track, and how embarrassed his kid was. And we'd interrupt and ask questions about what kind of wax was he using, and maybe he should shave a little more weight off the front of the Pinewood Derby racer, or after the back, someone else would say. And the next thing you know, we're fighting about the best way to weigh a Pinewood Derby racer. And the distress and the upset and the embarrassment are not anything anyone is dealing with. Now, some of us, Puritan people and others, realizing that what our families had taught us about life was less helpful than they'd thought, or that our coping mechanisms that had kept those feelings at bay had accidentally turned into drug or alcohol problems, well, we joined support groups or recovery groups. Others of us came into covenant groups or small group ministry. Some of us were confused and flummoxed when we first entered these rooms and found that people just sat quietly listening while someone else talked. Why, they just rambled on and on. Others of us took to it like fish to water. Finally, a place where I can speak and people don't interrupt me and they listen. Some of us found ourselves judgmental of other people taking up so much time talking about themselves. Oh my goodness, what an ego-driven thing, I thought. Wow, it sure is all about me in here. I'd been taught that anything about me was too much. But over time, I realized that no, this is how humans grow, connect, and develop trust. We learn that people will listen to us deeply. We practice listening to them. We learn that people will let us share at our own pace, will believe what we say, and will care for us even when it is difficult to care for ourselves. They will listen and maintain our confidences and protect our privacy. For some of us, this was the absolute opposite of how we grew up. In small group ministry and covenant groups, recovery or therapy groups, we learned to listen, to suspend judgment, to notice when we made an assumption, to dismiss it, or to check it out. And then suddenly we started finding ourselves doing it elsewhere, bearing witness to people. We started noticing and resisting our impulse to be right, to know the answer, to tell someone right away what to do, or to fix it for them. We started learning to resist the impulse to do anything that would move the feeling away from us. We bore witness to friends. We bore witness to colleagues. We sat and held space for people after tragedy. We learned to be with someone's feelings without taking them in, to be empathetic and present without drowning in the emotion. Well, next thing you know, we were bearing witness willy-nilly all over the place. In the supermarket before pandemic, I was doing one of those big shoppings getting ready, and there was a man the age of my father who stood confused in front of the soup. Blue jeans and a flannel shirt with suspenders, hunched and staring. I paused and asked, "Are you okay? Can I help?" He asked me if I knew where the mushroom soup was. I said, "There's quite a few different brands. Do you know which one you want?" He told me he didn't really know. His wife always cooked, and he didn't know what to get now that she'd died. I stood there for 10 minutes and I listened to him talk about his wife and her cooking, how confusing the grocery store is, and how he regretted never going with her to shop. It was much harder than he thought it was all those years. In the end, we identified that she made a really creamy, mushroomy soup, and I helped him choose two to try. But mushroom soup wasn't what he needed that day. I mean, sure, he needed to buy it, but what he needed was for someone to see him, to bear witness to a way his life had completely changed, to how he was bereft and didn't know how he'd continue moving forward. It was an honor to stand with him there in that aisle. Willy-nilly, I say. When we are present, just present with someone, we open ourselves and them up to possibilities. When we try not to control the possibilities or the outcome, but just let it come, miracles of connection, of trust can happen. And what happens is nothing like what we expect, and so much more beautiful.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all our new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As when we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We go back into the world, however that is for us. This, wear your masks, wash your hands, love your people and let them love you. Willy-nilly, I say.
Please join me in the congregational response as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.